And welcome back to Moving Conversations. I'm Brian Ritchie. Joining me as always is Nora St. John. And we have a special guest, but we'll get to the guest in just a minute. Before we do that, do us a favor, hit that like and subscribe button. We really appreciate it. Comment, share, do all of the above. It helps us to be able to bring on wonderful guests like we have today. Also, check us out on Instagram through Moving Convos and movingconvos@gmail.com is the best way to get in touch with us. I got that out of the way. I wanted to get that out of the way real fast, Nora. So now,
Boom.
How are you doing, Nora?
I'm doing just fine. I got a little bit of a cold, so if my voice sounds funny, that would be why. And I'm super excited about actually all the guests that we've been having lately. It's been really fun to have different people, and Brian, I always learn something every time we're in a conversation with people, which is like our joy in life is learning stuff. How you doing, Brian?
I'm doing good. Yeah. I think you and I are both gearing up for the travel season, which is coming up and whatnot. I've been picking your brain a little bit. You've been to parts of the world that I haven't. So it's kind of like, ooh, what would you suggest here? What would you suggest there? So that's the one nice thing about teaching abroad and teaching, in areas you've never been to. We really get to experience new cultures, new scenery, all that kind of stuff. So I love to do that. It's always fun. So yeah. And everything else is doing good.
Excellent. So I have the great pleasure today of introducing Kelly Leonardi, who is one of our Balanced Body Master Educators, longtime ballerina, amazing teacher of all things, and has been teaching Pilates for, I think, even longer than I have, which is like 38 years, do we decide,
38 years.
38 years. Yes, and she started when she was 12, so, she's...
So obviously, I was going to say, wait a minute. How's that possible?
A little older than that, but...
we had a really wonderful conversation. I was just when we were down teaching at her studio down in Southern California about just how Pilates has supported her life, her personal life and her professional life, and how it's kind of really woven through so many things that she's done and developed so many skills for her and so many wonderful supports. So I thought we'd kind of talk about just how dance and Pilates come together, how dancers use Pilates and topics like that. So we begin. Welcome, Kelly.
Yeah. Thank you. This is a fun topic, and thanks for having me, guys. And it was so nice to see you when you were down in Orange County recently. Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about, just start from the beginning. Like, when did you first, start from the beginning. When did you first get introduced to Pilates, and how has it kind of moved forward from there?
Yeah, so to start, my Pilates career and relationship with Pilates goes way back, as you know. I started after a knee injury. I was 15, and I did 36 performance shows, a run of carousel. Actually, it wasn't a ballet, it was a musical on a kind of a concrete playhouse stage with not a sprung floor, and tore 80% of my meniscus. And so, it was rough. I was young, very aspiring dancer, knew that I wanted to be a professional dancer right out of the gate. I felt like I just was driven towards that. And then I was with this injury, and some of the doctors were like, wow, that's a pretty big tear. So we don't know how this recovery is going to be. So I had my surgery, and luckily I had a great doctor in LA at Cedars-Sinai, and he turned me to Pilates for my rehab. And back then it was, as we know, not mainstream, and it was a bit hard to find Pilates, but I was in Orange County, and I went to Diane Diefenderfer, and she was also a dance teacher of mine, and started post-rehabbing from there, and just overall conditioning. And I had great teachers there. And as I got stronger and got back to dancing and realized that I could dance again, and that almost that leg was stronger than my other leg that is very hyperextended and wonky on that side. This one got a little straighter and stronger, but also just overall body connectivity. At such a young age, wow, my whole class, my whole performance changed, and I really realized that, and I at that age, I thought, I really want to share this with somebody else.
We've
So
heard
Other
how,
this a
dancers.
lot. I always find this
this is
interesting.
the
How
dancer's
many,
story, isn't it? Actually, the
Yes.
Pilates
that's just what I was
teacher's
gonna say.
story.
Yeah, that they sort of, how they get involved in it? Well, I was a dancer and then I got injured
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
introduced into Pilates and fell in love. So I
Mhm.
find that this is a common theme that we hear about from a number of people. And what I find fascinating is what you are saying is what we hear from a number of them is you ended up being stronger afterwards. It actually
Mhm.
helped you with your dance, whereas I
Mhm.
think a lot of young people are sort of, well, I don't know, I don't need to do that. I'm in great shape and da da da. They sort of take their bodies for
Mhm.
granted
Yeah, absolutely.
until they can't anymore. Whereas if they had
Mhm.
started beforehand, maybe they could have prevented some of it and maybe they'd be even stronger at at the dance that they choose.
Right. And I think even at that young age, it's like being handed a new language. So dance is a language of movement in your body and a language of knowledge, choreography, this, that. But Pilates is a whole new language of that and another layer of, like you're saying, Brian, like that element of how to connect your muscles, learn more about the physicality of it. And at a young age, I was just, I nobody ever does. It's just make a shape
Yeah.
and make
Yeah.
it look
Do
pretty
it.
and
Yeah.
push yourself to the edge physically and emotionally. And so Pilates, even again at a very young age, this was very profound for me to be so young and kind of understand that, like, Pilates creates balance in me. It's kind of a, even my mind, even the breath, all of it, just to reconnect to my body and not such a driving, pushing way, but to create space to just rebuild my technique and progress from there. Yeah, so it's an overall strength, not just physical.
Yeah.
Did Diane study with Ron? Where did Diane get her training? I realize I don't know.
Yes,
Yeah, just from
yeah,
Ron,
with
right?
Ron and
Yeah.
Romana. Hmm.
Yeah, okay. Because I was suddenly
Yeah,
realizing like I didn't know her story. Yeah.
yeah. So we had lots of integration of those two coming in and out, and so I did have more uh, that foundation of Pilates too, where we were, there was not a lot of modifications
Yeah, it was
or
classical.
it was, yeah, it was classical and we were just doing it. And even at that level, I think it's also the guidance of the teacher though, and
Yeah, absolutely.
the sensitivity of that, and that was that really touched me too. So I think that touched the personal part of it, of me wanting to eventually help somebody else, give back.
So Kelly, what's just to point out for people who don't know, you had a very, very long dance career after this, right?
Yeah.
And many people at your age who had a knee injury that relatively severe would not have been able to continue on to everything else that you've done. So, Pilates, and I know I started Pilates when I was 27, and I was like, man, I wish I had this earlier. It just would have changed
Mhm.
so many things. I know
Yeah.
that's many dancers feeling who find it later in their career. It's like, oh, this would have really helped this period, this injury, this kind of thing.
Absolutely. And nowadays, as we know, I mean, I teach dance still, and it's just at American Ballet Theater's West Coast Conservatory. I taught for 8 years. Now I'm on a little break, but now I'm back subbing and in
Yeah.
for an 8 week term. And it's just so great that just all of the, not only Pilates, but conditioning PTs that are involved in these kids' life. It just makes me so happy. We just taught Wednesday and came out, and a PT came in doing assessments and uh, just trying to get these kids stronger and more resilient. Yeah, it's the dance world and athletic world, I'm sure, has really changed since the 80s.
But the dance world particularly. I mean, I was at
Yeah.
St.
Mhm.
Francis Hospital with Dr. Garrick and Patrice Whiteside, and that was like the beginning of dance medicine as a thing. Like
Yeah.
dance medicine was really just in its absolute infancy. And just to not to put too fine a point on it, dancers and football players are the same in terms of injury frequency and pain tolerance. It's like that's kind of the level we're talking at. But the challenge for so long was dancers made no money. So there wasn't a lot of money to spend on dance medicine, and it really took a lot of really dedicated people. I think of Diane, I think of Dr. Garrick, I think of a lot of the people that I knew at that time to actually focus on it and really work more appropriately with dancers. So
Yeah, the longevity of our careers are not
not
very
long, mostly.
not yeah, they're not looking so good all the time. But yeah, this really sets the body up for success for
I
especially nowadays, starting young and in training.
I think that something that you said really resonates with our change in attitude when training anybody, whether it be an athlete or a dancer, even theater people and whatnot, is resiliency. We want the
Hmm.
body to be resilient. You
Hmm.
can't continue to beat down on something and expect it to come back to the same shape every single time or to come back stronger, which is really what you're asking an athlete to do. And as a dancer, as an athlete, you can only do that to a certain point in your life. Keep beating on it, beating on it, beating on it, and have it snap back. Eventually, it's going to break down. There's going to be more breakdown than build up. And with age, with injury, etc., you see that happening more rapidly. And I think in sports and dance and theater, everything, it's sort of like, okay, well, who's next? That person
Yeah,
can't do it
it's
anymore.
always
So
somebody.
you're to the side. Who's the next young buck, perfect, bodied person that we can put on stage
Mhm.
and do what I need them to do so they don't think about that. Whereas now I think there's a lot more, okay, how do we keep our bodies more resilient so we can perform longer, so we can perform better? And you're going to see with that resiliency, you're going to see better movement quality as well.
Absolutely. And we train so much for that performance, Brian, but then we don't train for what comes after.
Never.
And this is even with everything that I had, all the tools before. Yeah, you can't ever prepare what comes after. So cross conditioning, or if we're talking Pilates, is just such a great segue for that.
And when you're teaching at ABT, the West Coast regime, whatever you, sorry, the
Conservatory.
school, conservatory.
Yeah, that's cool.
The word was on the tip of my tongue and I couldn't quite get there.
It's a mouthful.
Yeah. Are you teaching specific dance or are you teaching cross conditioning? Are you teaching other things as well? Or do you use Pilates as sort of a warm up to get their bodies ready to do what you're asking it to do later? What do you
Mhm.
actually, are you doing in your performance and in your training with them?
Yeah, so for me personally, when I went there, I kind of said, I just want to teach dance. I have a certificate in the curriculum, and it was just a way to balance. I was teaching, from dance to Pilates owner, to back to just get in touch with that movement and those meaningful parts of what brought me to where I am now as a career Pilates. I wanted to bridge that a little bit and find that identity again. And so I didn't teach any cross conditioning, although I ended up doing it for subbing and some some here and there. But mostly, I always taught the curriculum. But I do have to say that the way that I teach dance is different from the knowledge that I have, and just the alignment and the
Mhm.
kinesthetic moves and connectivity and just energy, space, all of it. It has changed my perspective on dance throughout the years. But the kids themselves, they usually get sometimes it's really depends on the schedule. Sometimes they get like a almost like a hit class before,
Mm.
then then dancing, and then maybe Pilates after. Like I said, right now they're going through evaluations with a physical therapist and kind of assessing different range of motion to make sure that they stay injury free. So it kind of goes in little pieces, but they do have some form of conditioning a couple times a week, and depending on the level, because it goes from babies up to pre professional. And I'm in the pre professional division, and it is exciting to see. It's overuse, right? They're dancing so
Mhm.
many hours, and then that's just going to go right into a career, which triples that overuse.
Right.
So it's really
Yeah.
nice that they're getting these tools. I don't even, yeah. And anybody, to Nora's point, anybody in our generation, Nora, or a couple after that, we both have probably trained in Pilates, has been like, wow, why didn't I have this when I was younger? So these particular kids are good. And being a educator for Balanced Body, now having, floods of students coming in, the younger they are, they're like, oh yeah, I did this, every day
Nice.
in my dance training, if I have a dancer come through.
Yeah, that's great. That's
Yeah,
such a
so
difference.
it's nice. It's such a big difference. I'm like, "Oh, wow, like, they know the whole Pilates mat repertoire. This is amazing," because they've been doing it, like Nora said, since they were 12.
Right. So so Kelly, you were an injured dancer, you started your Pilates, both as a client, and then you started to become a teacher. When did you
Mhm.
become a teacher?
Yeah, so my journey on that was quite different than the nowadays journey. It was just a lot of mentorship, watching,
Yeah,
practicing,
yeah.
watching, practicing, watching, practicing, which I'm really grateful for. Like I said before, it's another language, so I was learning that language and then observing my mentors of how they approach people because quite young, and yeah, so I was kind of done. It was kind of 15 through like 18. I started to get clients
Wow,
and
that's young.
yeah, and yeah, it was a whole experience. In those days, it was sort of like the beginning workout, the intermediate, the advanced, the super advanced. So it was very structured, and I think that was the way that I was as a dancer. So it really wasn't too intimidating to actually teach those. And I had just watched some amazing teachers for so long, so I was very inspired to try to do that and help somebody. But then as it evolved, yeah, I don't know how far ahead we want to jump in this, but I ended up working as a professional dancer and working inside of the physio there at the
Mm,
company without any degree, not a PT assistant, nothing like that, just a conditioner. Like, oh, hey, there's a Pilates and a gyrotonic machine in the room. Do you want to like help us with some things? And so then those physios would be like, oh, hey, this person needs a knee or a shoulder, this, and I'm like, I did not know what
okay.
to do at all. I was like, oh my gosh, how am I? There's so many contraindications with this, but I don't know what to do. But with the help of them and me relaxing a little bit, I learned a lot from that, and so that's why
So,
your work resonates with me so much.
so when were you working with the physios? Was that wasn't at Diane's? Was that at Diane's?
No, so that was
Yeah.
fast forward when I,
Yeah.
jump started my career. That's why I was like, "Do we wanna go in this order?" Yeah, when I went back to my professional career, because basically I was, training, up in the Bay Area at San Francisco Ballet, and then I had a, family emergency that had to stop that from me continuing with San Francisco Ballet, and so I came back to Orange County for a while, and thank goodness I was able to teach Pilates because I was kind of left in a spot in my career as dancers, performers often come across where there's a crossroad, and Pilates was my bridge back to stability and also happiness, right? Of movement and sharing.
And you had to stop dance for a year-ish, or at
Yeah.
least
So,
minimize it, right? Kind of decrease your
um,
and you were at an
well,
early spot in your training,
yeah, it was
relatively.
quite some time. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
dancing um, regionally with a regional company in my area, but yeah, not professionally dancing. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, there was a big life pause,
Yeah.
personal life, family first. And so, yeah, so I taught a lot of Pilates during those years in with dance, because to live in Orange County with a dance career is pretty much impossible. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I was juggling a couple jobs, I had a baby during that time. So I was being a mama. But then I went back to dance. And yeah, I had another lot of life things happen. And I said, okay, it's time. I can't do this anymore. I've got to go audition and get a solid job and insurance. And that brought me to Hartford Ballet when I was 22 or 23, and moved to Connecticut, and that's when I started the next part of my dance career.
So a couple of things about that. One thing that I know when we talked about this earlier was how Pilates for you has been like a constant in a period of a
Mhm.
lot of change. I mean, I think there's not a lot of dancers I know that have a very straight path to wherever they want to go. I mean, if nothing else, it's like they're at this company, and then they're with that company, and then they're with this conservatory, and then they have an injury. It's like there's always ups and
Yeah.
downs, and then life
Hmm.
happens, as it did for you. Um,
Hmm.
and one of the things that I know I've thought a lot about as I became a teacher was there's something very comforting about thinking about other people when you're having perhaps a rough go on your own, or going through a
Yeah.
time when, life is difficult. And there's something
Hmm.
about just focusing on somebody else's problems for those hours when you're in the studio that were really incredibly
Hmm.
comforting. I know for me, I've talked to a lot of people about that gives them a lot of just like, okay, all I've got to do is think about this person's leg. Like that's all I have to think about right now. And it really
Absolutely.
gives you some peace, gives you some calmness, and gives you some, and a good job too, along with that.
Absolutely. I love that. I think it gives uh, dancers a place to go next, or
Yeah.
like in
Yes.
these pauses, a place in itself that is so powerful and so similar to movement, but like we're talking about in a different language. And yeah, for me, it just wasn't even a backup job. It wasn't like a waiting table job. It was just like,
Right.
it was a lifeline to stay connected to
Yeah.
movement, to artistry, to community. Like, to when you're an artist, you're very isolated often in your head. And then to give back, like you're saying, Nora, to help somebody else and talk about those things. Like, it's kind of not in our profession to like we talk to our peers, but we're really like in our head, like putting information and getting information, too much information from that. Put this in, do this, do that. And then it's just like, oh, why don't we talk about this and make this a little bit more organic? And that is very healing at a time of pause when you can't. In my situation, maybe three times in my career, my dance career, where it just was family life situations that just paused it, put it on a full halt. And each time I shifted back into Pilates, and Pilates just carried me forward. So I feel really lucky about that.
One of the things that I wanted to bring up, because it's just something I know, is I started teaching. Teaching Pilates a little after you did, 1980, 89, but practiced it in part of my dance training from 1979 on, and also did like the full mat work every day for years and
Mhm.
years. And then when I started at St. Francis, this was long before anybody knew what Pilates was, and most of us teaching at that point were dancers or ex-dancers. And one of the skills that we brought to the work was just having moved ourselves and watched movement deeply for years and tried to figure out how to do things in our
Yeah.
bodies for years. And it really is it's a skill that I see in all the ex dancers that I've taught over the years. And it's interesting, now that so many people are teaching Pilates who don't have that background, to try to get as much of that background into them as you can. If you're teaching a 30-year-old ex-marketing director or something like that,
Mhm.
it's just an interesting challenge I find to because you've been watching bodies. By the time you started Pilates as a client, you'd already been watching probably for 10 years and trying to figure out how
Mhm.
to make your leg do this and your arm do this and your back do that. So it's an
Mhm.
interesting way to develop the skills of movement.
Yeah, your eye really gets trained, I think, and to those
Yeah.
micro movements, and then to layer those with knowledge of why that happens. And that's the constant curiosity for me still, just why is that happen? Why did that happen? Even if it's the past or present or future or the client in front of me, all the things. That's just such a curiosity of movement and how things connect in our body. Yeah, there's so many correlations with this Pilates and dance. Yeah, it's beautiful.
And also learning how to articulate it, because the other thing
Mm,
about working with dancers for me is a lot of dancers have the skills but don't know how to articulate it. They know how to
Mhm.
teach
yeah,
somebody else because their leg just goes there, and they're not really sure how to get somebody else's leg that doesn't go there to do that same thing. So it's also
yeah,
what I loved about Pilates was I had to articulate what I felt and experienced. So it was a very useful for me tool of understanding what I'm doing and talking about it and understanding it more and more, the more I had to articulate it to somebody else.
absolutely. And that's what I really back to teaching the dancers. That's what changed my teaching dance skills is just looking at a room and just being like, oh, this this
Right.
psoas is tight. This adductors need strength, and but not telling them that, but trying to make that in their language and movement and combining the two.
I
Yeah.
find that
Awesome.
something you said earlier really resonated with me is there was a time when I was working with someone who was a Pilates instructor as well as a yoga instructor. And she was naturally gravitated towards yoga just because of how her body moved. And she said, can we spend one session and you just watch me do yoga and tell me
Mm,
what you see and guide me through to make it more efficient? And I'd
mm.
never done that before, but I thought, oh, sure. I mean, I watch bodies for a living, so this made sense to me. And with each pose, small changes. Put your weight here. Can you feel that, just small changes? And she said, oh my gosh, I could feel the energy change in my whole body
Nice.
with those small things
Yeah.
because we've developed that eye. And I think for you to have that Pilates background, to be able to recognize that in your teaching with whether it be other dancers or just working with dancers, as a dancer, next to them, you're able to see things that other people can't because you have experiences watching bodies move in a totally different way rather than just the dance world.
Right, right. And just that functional move is so important. Or Brian, you were speaking at the studio when we were workshopping, just our head. If it's forward, how many pounds, 60 more pounds there,
Yeah.
the side. So just understanding not just abs, core, breath, but like actually alignment and where that energy is going and how to make that work for you or sustain. Yeah. So I love bringing that into, I think it's bringing the joy of teaching dance. I love the music first, and I love the kids too. I love kids, but I love the movement and being in the studio. It's just like home. Being in backstage,
Mhm.
it's home. It's just where I feel it's just my feels like home. But now to bring those elements and see kids like right immediately, I'm no magician. It's them. They're in charge of their body. Just like, oh, like you said, Brian, just put your weight right here. Boom. And then it's
Yep.
just like right at,
Magic.
and it kind of
How'd that happen?
guys are, yeah, and I'm like, you guys are strong. You're actually really strong, but let's use your muscles efficiently.
I love it. That's
Yeah.
that's the power of what you do, right? That's the power of what all of us do is trying to get that to go. But again, your
Mhm.
background in movement has made such just a difference. It's also one of the things that I always say is I've always called Pilates the dancer's retirement plan, which it certainly was for you, and it certainly was for me and many of us.
Yeah.
Because again, it's
Mm.
like how else? And I think you said this well earlier. How else do you keep those skills that you learned alive and growing? If you love movement and you love how the body works, and that's kind of what motivates you. There's not a lot of other. I mean, Pilates was a wonderful way to work with that, right? Pilates was like, okay, I've got all
Yeah.
these same tools that I've used for years, and now I get to use them, in another context. It's powerful.
It's powerful. And then the human connection, because dance is such a language of movement, which is really beautiful. But now to have conversations, or to have like my 75-year-old ballroom client that is just wants to move and dance for fun, and then it's like, but you're a ballerina, can you show me how to and I'm like, no, you've got it, let's just connect these pieces together, and I don't need to teach you a ballet class, you're just going to move with ease because we're going to start Pilates.
I
Yeah,
love it. I love it.
you can
So
just
you've
share
also
that.
taught, yeah. So you've also
Mhm.
taught, I know you teach like, don't you do an intensive specifically for dancers who want to become Pilates teachers? I know you've done that before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's how the summer intensive started. So it was the education summer intensive, to present balanced bodies education, because dancers, as we know, if they are working, they don't have very many days off. And it's really hard for them to travel and they get this maybe a couple weeks in the summer. So depending on their contract. So to have like a week, 8 days in a row, movement principles, mat 1, 2, and 3, or movement principles, reformer 1, 2, 3, and then come back maybe to the apparatus at a later time. It's 8 hours a day, 8 days in a row, no break.
Ooh.
But dancers kind of have that resilience and
So they're
that,
used to that. That's not working that hard isn't
yeah,
unusual. Yeah.
yeah. So I had a lot of dancers from New York City Ballet that would come out and do that. My son's a professional dancer, and he's
Mm.
34. So he, had friends and things that were like, "Oh, your mom's a Pilates, I want to get an educator." That sounds like something that I should put in my back pocket. So it's kind of created over those things, but it has evolved to to the mass public, and the way that I coach that for a hate to put the dancer non-dancer brand on it, but dancers just have that language, and often, like I said, the 23-year-olds that are coming to me have done Pilates now 10 years at least, mat, so they have a different understanding. But I just coach the the people that are like, yeah, I want to get this done in a week. I'm like, wait, 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 let's see your experience, let's see. So it's kind of an entry point of like, it's not for everyone, that intensive, but it was developed for that, or maybe a physical therapist, or somebody with a lot of, or an athlete, that's somebody that has a lot of already anatomy, movement background, that can digest all that information. It was great. Then they'd come back the next summer and test out. And
Nice.
one of my New York City ballet dancers opened the little a little place inside, the conditioning inside the Lincoln Center, and
Awesome.
it's for the
Yeah.
dancers. And she has a lot of videos out. And now they're going to do Coraline.
Awesome.
Nice.
Awesome.
Hmm. Hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
one of the things that I think is the other connection between dance and Pilates is we've talked about many of them, but the other one is it's a job. It's a good paying job, which few dancers actually have. I mean, there's a few jobs out there for dancers that actually pay a living wage, but many of them don't. And a lot of dancers are, pickup dancers. They do a show here and a show there, and they kind of patch together their income.
Yeah.
But for so many
Mhm.
of them, Pilates provides, again, like it did for you, a bit of a through line and a kind of reliable, reasonably well-paid income source around whatever their schedule is. I know when I had my studio, I was always like, so-and-so's off performing and so-and-so's, rehearsing. And so I've got
Mhm.
to adjust their schedule for these 3 months or whatever it was.
Right.
And that was always, really just a useful thing for them and a fun thing for us.
Yeah, exactly. It's instead of waiting tables, like a lot
Yeah,
of,
exactly.
or working at the souvenir shop, like a lot of Broadway people do, it's, or
Right.
as ushers and things like that. We get to do something in movement and share, keep moving ourselves. It kind of keeps your own body actively thinking and moving too. So yeah, it's a perfect pair.
So, Kelly, could you speak a little bit to how you feel like Pilates helps dancers? Like, could you tell us a case study or certain situations where you've really found that Pilates made a big difference for somebody?
Yeah, I can think of a few people. Um, well, I can think of my son for one
Mhm.
first. because he started at 14 dancing, just
Mm,
decided. And he wasn't a, football player, baseball, athletic type of,
Mm.
he was a surfer, skater, drummer type. And so there was different muscles, right? So um, when we saw him in classes, he just had a natural presence. So that you can't teach, but um, and and musicality from probably all the instruments that he played, plus growing up in a ballet company and sitting on the floor a lot in snow days and by orchestras and pianos since he was born. I just put him right by the piano taking class in the carrier. So he had a lot of music in his life, but musical and just a natural presence. But then taking him into the muscularity of it all, kind of having that blank slate and starting with Pilates and working from the inside out, and
mhm.
then after the inside, like the trunk was there, the branches were there, then training the power part of that.
Uh,
Amazing. I mean, from 14, he started at 17, he graduated as his summer birthday. 18, he was an apprentice with the National Ballet of Canada. So it was a very short trajectory of training, and knock on wood, no injuries until the pandemic. And again, jumping on beaches, concrete, anywhere you could do outside, and then fractured his navicular. But till then, I mean, and he used yoga and Pilates. I know, like after shows, just in the dressing room, ice, cold plunge, and yoga Pilates. That's therapy. That's a
nice,
cool down. That's a cool
nice.
down. So he kept that sort of, and then he cross trains with weights too, and they're tip top athletes. But anyhow, that inside out, um, breath to movement, alignment, all helped. Standing in first position, not over rotating, kind of understanding where his body, everybody's body is so unique, as we know. And so his body's alignment, his body's natural range of motions, he was working that, not forcing. And I really enjoyed watching that. And then the power, he still spoke to me the other day about like jumping machine is different than Pilates, but we had other systems in the studio, and he was like, "Man, I just remember jumping on those things." He's like, "But I really think that was like my part. We had to like get him jumping fast, that the bone density of the joint stability, all of the things that he needed quickly to
Yeah.
get this career path." I mean, it was like he came to me, "I'm going to be a professional dancer." I was like, "Wow, better get into class soon."
Okay. Boom, boom.
you know,
Gotta get going.
yeah, yeah. But instead of all the class, it was all the Pilates and the cross conditioning, that I think that he would agree with me on that. So that's a huge one. But just in general, with almost every dancer coming off of ACLs, Achilles tear, Achilles like post rehab on all of those. I mean, just I think it's really the same thing. It's the overall connectivity and kind of just giving your body a little bit of space to not push it so much,
Mhm.
and just to breathe and feel like you're feeling emotion, you're feeling, but it's going so fast when you're dancing, and Pilates allows you to just feel everything and give yourself permission to, again, I keep circling back on that, like that push, that drive, that expectation that we put our bodies through. It gives you a permission in a safe place. And a lot of times my dancers are just, they've just never had a moment to be with a trainer either, and just kind of like, how to help me, help me, help me, just they don't have the answers. They don't get the answers. Everything's thrown at them so fast, to have somebody kind of break something down on for them, and or see a particular, like Brian was doing with that yoga teacher, just seeing a particular, if you're just over here a little bit, and then they find that themselves and they carry that little gem with them. Those are the really life-changing things that I have seen. A lot of emotional, um, mental stability actually, too, and a place where they can go and be with their body, even though they're dancing with their body all day. It's like, this is where nobody tells me. It's like, this is my own little
Mhm.
practice that I'm doing
Right.
to warm up. Like, what are you going to do? 15 minutes if you get called into the theater, somebody's sick, and you haven't done your perfect ritual of like what I eat in the morning, and then when I take a break, and when I put my feet up the wall, and then when I take the hour and a half class. What happens if it just happens? How are you going to prepare your body? So those are some of the tools that I share with my dancers.
That's awesome. That makes
Mhm.
such a difference. Makes just it's
Mm.
life-changing. I
It
loved what you
is.
said. Yeah, I loved what you said about the kind of the mindful component. I think about one teacher particularly. She was a dance teacher I'd known for a long time, and she came into Pilates for her first session. I think we spent an hour on footwork because she just wanted to feel everything and experience
Mhm.
everything. And you don't get a chance to do that in class, right? You do your plies, whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
But she was really like, okay, what about this? What about this? Where's my pelvis? Where's my feet? Where's my knees? And just really paying attention to all of it. And it was sort of a funny session, but it was also like she just needed that time to pay attention and to
Yeah.
understand and to explore on her own body. I mean, I felt like I was just guiding her in her explorations. I wasn't giving her a lot of feedback in a lot of ways, because she
Yeah.
just needed to like be in her body and feel stuff and figure stuff out, and that's where
Absolutely.
so much comes from. Because if you can feel it, then you can make other choices, or you can be better at what you're doing if you get a sense of what it is that you're doing.
Yeah. And isn't it incredible? Like 50 minutes or 60 minutes can give you enough time to explore that. And it's like such a gift. It's such a
Yeah,
gift. And when you're a dancer, you're just do, like we said at the beginning, just,
yeah,
make this shape, do a choreograph, there's so much going on. And then when you just have a time to be like, wait, how do I do this? Where does this go? How can I help myself with these things? Then it just brings some sort of sense of peace to uh, your work if you're a
yeah,
dancer. And so yeah, and that's like a huge gift, because a lot of, and especially professional dancers, uh, you kind of stop getting, you get the coaching of the details, which is lovely. But you stop getting so much of the technical, you don't really,
yeah,
in class, it's a warm up, you could go for months not getting a correction, kind of general corrections. And but dancers are, as any athlete, is striving to get better, to get stronger, to do the performance better. And so then you're kind of at a stagnant point of like, wow, there's you start to ask a friend, so can you watch this and see what I'm, see what's happening here? And that's all the ballet language. But then when you get another language to layer on top of that, and a knowledge of some sort of how anatomy of how things are working, then it's a game changer. Then you can kind of sustain yourself for a long time and be in the studio and just work on yourself, and work with your instructor or trainer, and then go back and work on yourself, and that's your coach, both mentally and physically. So I think we need that. The hardest part is, for I think for dancers, is you know the affordability again of it.
Mm.
When you are professional, even, it's not always accessible in every so then there's always a Pilates. That I've noticed, there's a Pilates room now, and most of the US companies, and it's different in Europe. It's much more progressive, actually. But and there's always a room, so they can go in and use it. And
right.
so I think what a lot of professionals do now is they get some tools, they spend a little bit of money privately, and then they go use those tools on their own.
Mhm.
Or they come into one of these summer intensives and just get trained for their own practice, and then go take those tools because the equipment is available, just not always the training.
Yeah.
Yep.
S- So, tell us a little bit about, because the other thing too that I found is that,
Mhm.
with dancers, Pilates can often help the post dance period, because very often, many of the dancers I have, number one, have a lot of mental issues when they have to stop dancing. That's always a
Mm,
really
Mhm.
psychologically challenging transition for most of the dancers I've worked with. And number two is like physically, they're often then trying to kind of rebuild their body and trying to get back to a body that then can function for life in a more ordinary way. And sometimes that's a
Right.
challenge. There's injuries, there's just residue of all the things that have happened for them. And sometimes I know it takes a while for that. What's your experience been with like that post dance phase for you, for other dancers?
Yeah. Yeah, for me, like I was mentioning, it's always been a little bridge over. So there was numerous times in my life where it just was, mostly family emergency that it just would halt it. So then it was this, oh my gosh, thank goodness. What a blessing that I took an interest in this. And I did actually even have a thought when I was 18, like, I know that this is not going to be an easy career. So I need to have something in my back pocket too. So I did have a little bit of that. So for me, it was always just like, wow, I could go to a gym, teach a 40-person mat class. I could pick up, like I was telling you, work at the dance's physio and pick up some clients there, train friends, whatever it was. It was just, felt like a safe place to go and keep moving and keep my identity a little bit, because I think
Mhm.
that's um,
mhm.
what I see with, dancers retiring or an injury stopping them, or, that you really lose your identity because you've just grown up. Like for me, I was 7, how I knew nothing else. And dance is such a, when you do commit to it, there's not a whole lot of time to even high school go to dances. You kind of lose out on a lot of, you choose to lose out on your childhood a lot. So when those formative years are gone and now you're a performer and you're going, and then it stops, identity um, gets left behind. So, and I think that Pilates, because it is movement and mind to body movement and breath, and it has that similar language, it just it helps bridge that gap.
Yeah, I see
Keeps you.
that with athletes a lot, as well, when they especially if it's an injury that has
Hmm.
stopped them.
Yeah.
Because it's one thing if you know you're gonna retire, if you know that this is high of a
Hmm.
level as I'm going,
You plan
and
it.
then
Yes.
you kinda plan on it. You see it coming up. When an injury is what prevents you from doing it, I think there's a drop off. You talk to a lot of different athletes of any different sport. Do you have one more game in you? Do you have one more match in you? And they all say, "Yeah, I got one more." They could be
Hmm.
60 years old, but in their minds, their spirit, they still have that. They haven't given it up. They haven't put it on the shelf. Whereas, and I think it's very similar probably for dance, is when you have something like Pilates where you're still using your body, when you're still working with people in this field, in this realm, it keeps it alive in you. And you still sort of
Yeah.
have a toe in the field. You're still there. Like you said, you feel at home backstage. You feel at home working with these dancers.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
comfortable. Whereas I think a lot of people go from, well, that's my former life. And now I have to face the world. And what am I gonna
Hmm.
do now?
Yeah.
There's that
Yeah.
depression that you see. You don't get that nearly as much when you go into something that you can still keep your toe in.
You toe in, whether it's coaching or dancing or teaching or
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that is just the most, I think that is the most beautiful thing about it, for that career transition for a dancer, because also, or athlete, I think you've got the team, the dancer, you have the company, and then you have your own little bubble of people, and then you're kind of also shot out of that bubble of community, or
yeah, every
the
way.
people that you lean on, and they become semi family. to you because
Mhm.
you've spent so many years with them and you all speak the same language and you're kind of isolated because I don't. And a lot of times, I mean, when I moved back to Orange County the last time when my career was done and I moved back here again for family um, situation, and I started teaching Pilates in Newport Beach. I mean, I would be like, "Oh, I was just a professional dancer," and they'd be like, "Oh, so what did you do for your career?" And
Mm.
I was like, "I was a professional dancer," and they're like, "Oh, so how did you make it?" I was like, "No, 8 hours a day,
Right. That's what I did. That
That
was
was
my
my
performances."
job.
job.
Yeah, performances, 32 plus performances of certain pieces, a whole season, tours. Yeah, it was my career and it was amazing. I mean, I think it's probably different. Brian, where you are is definitely different if you're teaching Pilates in New York City or one of the big cities that have a home company. But in Orange County here, we don't. And then we're very film oriented in LA, and there is
Right.
dance that comes through travel. Broadway's comes through travel, but
Not.
people are just like, "Oh, but what do you really do?" And it was humbling.
Wow.
It was
Wow.
humbling, and I did feel that even with Pilates with me, I did feel sort of like, "Wait, who was I
Who
just
am I?
living
What's
in my
happening
own
here?
little
Right.
world? Was I not, giving back to my community and performing like not it's just not a ego-driven thing. It's like a share of a language and um, performance and music that brings joy to a lot of people. Yeah, it was astounding to me. But anyhow, back to our topic of when the dancer steps out of the studio or the athlete out of the team and is not a performer or a team player, having a community um, to teach or to teach with, I think really speaks to me. I bring that into my current studio right now. I think that is something, even as a teacher, Pilates teacher that wasn't a dancer, sometimes you can feel isolated and alone and not learning and growing together. So I'm real big on like that. And I think I got that from my experience or observing others' experience of kind of getting shot out of the bubble and not having your identity, not having a community, um, and also just a familiarity to both of your points of movement and that performative state of like, okay, it's not too hard to walk in front of a large room and feel kind of comfortable too. So
Yep. Yep.
uh, definitely it took a while for my voice to get comfortable, more than my body, but I
Right.
think
Because your body
when
could do it all.
yeah, my
Yeah.
body and I'm like, "Oh, how am I gonna explain this?" But I think when you have movement, the words just come out, right? I noticed, like, when I had, back surgery or breast cancer I've had. I couldn't move my arm, and I'm such an Italian and like talk with my hands, and I like couldn't move my arm anymore. And it was like by me, I almost like couldn't get the
Couldn't work.
words out
Talk.
when
Yes.
I was teaching my
That's a
clients or
classic.
yeah or education programs. I'm like, oh my gosh, maybe I start to tap dance my feet and I can get the words out. Yeah, it's silly, but true. So I think it really speaks in that way too.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, Kelly, this has been a wonderful deep dive into some of the connections between dance and Pilates. I love your personal story is really just lovely, and there's so many things that came out of this. I think in terms of how you work with people, how we work with people, how we learn to work with people, how we bring our skills and our passion to what we do. Just really really appreciate that.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for letting me share it and being just the wonderful people that you are, giving this constant education and place, like I said, a community for us to listen to and learn from and just feel connected to. Because still, it doesn't matter how big you have, it's like we all need that. I listen to you guys all the
Mhm.
time driving to work, and I'm like, oh, you're feeling the same way. It feels
Yep.
good. That feels good. Or I'm learning something. That feels even better. So I love what you guys bring here too. And it's been an honor to get to share all these dance stories.
Well, I
Thank you
love
so much.
yeah, the last thing I was gonna say one last thing. I know Brian's trying to
Yeah.
wrap us up, but I just the one
No,
last
no.
thing was the thing about community is what is so, important to me about what we do. And one of the things I often say when I'm in a group of movers or Pilates teachers or personal trainers is we care about movement the way very, very few people do. We are kind of
Mhm.
unique. And I often say kind of oddball little group of
Yeah.
people that actually care whether your foot is turned out or not, because most people don't care at all.
Yeah,
So
we're like nerding out on
we're
that.
nerding out on those little things. So thank you so much for supporting all of that and for really just
Thank you.
continuing to bring your passion into the next generation and beyond. So really just
Thank
respect
you.
and appreciate so much of what you do.
Thank
And
you
how
so
would
much.
people get in touch with you if they wanted to find out more information about your teaching or more information about your studio? What's the best way for them to, see you? Social
Mhm.
media, website, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so I think our one-stop shop is the website, www.bluemoonpilates.com. And on there, it tells what we're doing in the studio, but it also has a big education thing, education, mentoring with Kelly, and then our workshops, which you guys were on there. So any continuing education credits or current little workshops that we're having, and then the whole balanced body education. We run 3 comprehensives a year
Wow.
with my co-educator, Heidi Coles. And so we have that whole schedule on there. That's our one-stop shop, or at Blue Moon Pilates on Instagram. My personal Instagram is Pilates with Kelly Leonardi. And so all of those places have links. And I'm a very big people person, though. I like to pick up the phone. I do a lot of free consultations for a half an hour just to kind of help people on
Great.
their journey, because this career transition, if they're doing that, or just any new career, if you're just taking on a new Pilates career, it takes, it's education, and it's nice to have somebody guide them through. And that's really my passion right now, is getting like the next generation, holding the integrity of the work and getting the next generation educated. So those are the places.
Great.
Thanks.
Fantastic. Awesome.
Hmm.
Well, thank you
Yeah.
very, very much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Again,
Mm.
do us a favor, hit that like and subscribe button. We really appreciate every comment, every share, every like goes a long way. If you want to get in touch with us, movingcombos@gmail.com is the best way. And check us out on Instagram at Moving Combos. And for Nora St. John and Kelly Leonardi, I'm Brian Ritchie. We'll see you all next week.
Thanks. Bye, guys.
Bye. Thank you.